What makes this story great? In episode 6 of this series, we look at chapter 3 of Dracula, a novel by the Irish writer Bram Stoker, published in 1897. We're going to read an extract from the chapter, then take a closer look at the writing and context, and then I'll suggest some further reading. So far in the novel, a young Englishman called Jonathan Harker has travelled to Transylvania to meet a mysterious nobleman called Count Dracula. Jonathan, a solicitor, is staying with the Count in his castle in the Carpathian Mountains in order to help the Count with legal documents relating to property that the Count wishes to buy in England. However, Jonathan starts to have doubts and wonders why he can't move freely about the castle, and why he has been warned to only sleep in the rooms which he has been assigned. One night, ignoring this advice, Jonathan explores the castle and falls asleep in a different room, but is soon woken up by a strange sight. In the moonlight opposite me were 3 young women, ladies by their dress and manner. I thought at the time I must be dreaming when I saw them, for though the moonlight was behind them, they threw no shadow on the floor. They came close to me and looked at me for some time, and then whispered together. 2 were dark and had high aquiline noses like the Count, and great dark piercing eyes that seemed to be almost red when contrasted with the pale yellow moon. The other was fair as can be, with great wavy masses of golden hair and eyes like pale sapphires. I seemed somehow to know her face, and to know it in connection with some dreamy fear, but I could not recollect at the moment how or where. All 3 had brilliant white teeth that shone like pearls against the ruby of their voluptuous lips. There was something about them that made me uneasy, some longing and at the same time some deadly fear. I felt in my heart a wicked, burning desire that they would kiss me with those red lips. It is not good to note this down, lest someday it should meet Mina's eyes and cause her pain, but it is the truth. They whispered together, and then all 3 laughed, such a silvery, musical laugh, but as hard as though the sound never could have come through the softness of human lips. It was like the intolerable, tingling sweetness of water glasses when played on by a cunning hand. The fair girl shook her head coquettishly, and the other 2 urged her on. One said, "Go on, you are the first, and we shall follow. Yours is the right to begin." The other added, "He is young and strong, there are kisses for us all." I lay quiet, looking out under my eyelashes in an agony of delightful anticipation. The fair girl advanced and bent over me till I could feel the movement of her breath upon me. Sweet it was in one sense, honey sweet, and sent the same tingling through the nerves as her voice, but with a bitter underlying the sweet, a bitter offensiveness as one smells in blood. I was afraid to raise my eyelids, but looked out and saw perfectly under the lashes. The girl went on her knees and bent over me, simply gloating. There was a deliberate voluptuousness which was both thrilling and repulsive, and as she arched her neck she actually licked her lips like an animal, till I could see in the moonlight the moisture shining on the scarlet lips and on the red tongue as it lapped the white sharp teeth. Lower and lower went her head as the lips went below the range of my mouth and chin and seemed about to fasten on my throat. Then she paused, and I could hear the churning sound of her tongue as it licked her teeth and lips, and could feel the hot breath on my neck. Then the skin of my throat began to tingle as one's flesh does when the hand that is to tickle it approaches nearer, nearer. I could feel the soft, shivering touch of the lips on the supersensitive skin of my throat, and the hard dents of 2 sharp teeth just touching and pausing there. I closed my eyes in a languorous ecstasy and waited with beating heart. But at that instant, another sensation swept through me as quick as lightning. I was conscious of the presence of the Count, and of his being as if lapped in a storm of fury. As my eyes opened involuntarily, I saw his strong hand grasp the slender neck of the fair woman, and with giant's power draw it back, the blue eyes transformed with fury, the white teeth champing with rage, and the fair cheeks blazing red with passion. But the Count, never did I imagine such wrath and fury, even to the demons of the pit. His eyes were positively blazing. The red light in them was lurid, as if the flames of hellfire blazed behind them. His face was deathly pale, and the lines of it were hard like drawn wires. The thick eyebrows that met over the nose now seemed like a heaving bar of white-hot metal. With a fierce sweep of his arm, he hurled the woman from him and then motioned to the others as though he were beating them back. It was the same imperious gesture that I had seen used to the wolves. In a voice which, though low and almost in a whisper, seemed to cut through the air and then ring around the room, he said, "How dare you touch him, any of you? How dare you cast your eyes on him when I have forbidden it? Back, I tell you all. This man belongs to me. Beware how you meddle with him, or you'll have to deal with me." The fair girl, with a laugh of ribald coquetry, turned to answer him. "You yourself never loved. You never love." On this the other women joined, and such a mirthless, hard, soulless laughter rang through the room that it almost made me faint to hear. It seemed like the pleasure of fiends. Then the Count turned, after looking at my face attentively, and said in a soft whisper, "Yes, I too can love. You yourselves can tell it from the past. Is it not so? Well, now I promise you that when I am done with him, you shall kiss him at your will. Now go, go! I must awaken him, for there is work to be done." "Are we to have nothing tonight?" said one of them with a low laugh as she pointed to the bag which he had thrown upon the floor, and which moved as though there was something living within it. For answer he nodded his head. One of the women jumped forward and opened it. If my ears did not deceive me, there was a gasp and a low wail, as of a half-smothered child. The women closed round, while I was aghast with horror, but as I looked they disappeared, and with them the dreadful bag. There was no door near them, and they could not have passed me without my noticing. They simply seemed to fade into the rays of the moonlight and pass out through the window, for I could see outside the dim, shadowy forms for a moment, before they entirely faded away. Then the horror overcame me, and I sank down, unconscious. That was an extract from Chapter 3 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. What do you think? Feel free to pause the video and gather your thoughts. If you've had a chance to do that, let's take a closer look. Foreign locations, dark and gloomy castles, vulnerable and noble heroes and heroines versus dark, predatory foreign figures of power. You've already got the tropes of classic Gothic fiction, which the audience would have been very familiar with because the genre was already very popular since the mid-18th century, and this novel was published in the late 19th century. And this is a great example. We've got the nighttime setting, we've got moonlight, we've got a dusty room where there are no footprints except for Jonathan's, and when he sees these strange women, they cast no shadow on the floor despite the moonlight. Looks-wise, they have high aquiline noses like the Count, and two of the women have dark features, dark hair, dark piercing eyes that are almost red. The other woman, interestingly, is described as very fair, with very golden hair and blue eyes. Therefore she seems more symbolic of European ideals of beauty, the archetypal blonde-haired, blue-eyed figure. All of them have brilliant white teeth against ruby, voluptuous lips, and are described as very animal-like. As the passage progresses, Jonathan isn't quite sure at the time whether or not he's dreaming. The scene is both pleasurable and torturous for Jonathan. He's filled with a dreamy fear, and any desire that he feels for the women is a wicked, burning one. He's clearly facing some kind of attack where he is the victim and they have all the power, and we believe that he's in fear of his life. But you've got a really interesting role reversal here where Jonathan is behaving more like a swooning heroine and the women are behaving more like stereotypically predatory, rakish male figures. The passage is also full of apparent contradictions. Their laughter sounds like it's too hard to come through their soft lips, which thus apparently can't be human. It's both intolerable and sweet. Jonathan himself feels a dreamy fear, and his anticipation of the attack fills him with both agony and delight, and the breath of the woman who bends over him is both honey-sweet and bitter, and the blonde woman is both thrilling and repulsive. Along with these apparent contradictions or oxymorons, you've got a lot of interesting adjectives and repetition. The word voluptuous is repeated, as is the imagery of red, with the words red and scarlet and ruby. In terms of other techniques, animal imagery is developed in that central paragraph where it looks as though the blonde woman is about to bite or eat Jonathan. She's compared to an animal, and a lot of attention is drawn to her sharp teeth, which are about to fasten on his throat, and the word lips and teeth are repeated quite a lot. In terms of pace and suspense and tension, the moment is drawn out, and it's almost funny in the way her approach is described as like that of a hand that's about to tickle you. The tension is briefly dissipated with the sudden arrival of the Count, dissipated and yet replaced with layers of a different kind of horror. His movements are as quick as lightning, a storm of fury, full of wrath and fury, a red light blazing like the flames of hellfire. This devilish imagery highlights the danger that Jonathan has always been in, but this time the Count has a different quality about him. Not only is he a powerful figure, which we've had hints of before up until this chapter, but here there seems to be also an undercurrent of sexual jealousy. How dare you touch him? This man belongs to me. You can have him after I am done with him. This makes the Count doubly threatening to contemporary Victorian audiences because of the homoerotic charge of the passage. And as if all that wasn't enough, it's soon revealed that the Count has been hunting. He throws a bag down in which there seems to be some living thing. Jonathan hears a low wail as of a half-smothered child, and the bag is referred to again as the dreadful bag. By this point, Jonathan on some level has realised that these are indeed some kind of monsters, if not vampires. As the women fade away into the moonlight, it's all too much for Jonathan. The horror overcomes him and he swoons and he sinks down unconscious. Of course, Jonathan is recounting all of this in his journal. This part of the novel is called Jonathan Harker's Journal. This is a really interesting structural feature because it gives an air of legitimacy and truth to all these apparently fantastical proceedings. And he mentions earlier in the same passage, but it is the truth. We also know that Jonathan is a solicitor, and he has displayed a healthy skepticism against other superstitious occurrences and practices that he's come across in his journey to Transylvania. Therefore, as a narrator, he seems to have a healthy dose of English skepticism and a logical, analytical, legal mind. And all this is significant because the rest of the novel turns out to be also made up of other people's journals and letters and newspaper clippings, which helps to give the entire extraordinary story a sense of legitimacy and truth. Those were just some thoughts on the opening part of Bram Stoker's Dracula. If you like that, do read the novel, which is in the public domain and available to read for free on sites such as Project Gutenberg, as well as libraries and bookshops. And if you want to check out other classic vampire stories that predate Dracula, I recommend John Polidori's The Vampyre, published in 1819, and Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, published in 1872. That's it from me for this week, but please like this video if you did, and subscribe if you want more. More from me next week. For now, happy reading!